It's another very hot day here in Budapest. We are in the mid-30s, and it is the day, Tuesday, when Parliament is in session and it has elected our new president. Now, it's a position I've told you before that isn't, I think, that essential, but still there has been some to and fro and some anger from some corners of the political spectrum about this appointment. Now, the man in question is a guy called András Baka. He is an old man, he is a judge. Now you'd think, so why was there an issue with the judge? It concerns two rulings that he was involved with. One to do with the 1956 revolution. You should know, if you're not Hungarian, that the 1956 revolution is sort of the moment of pride from the 20th century for Hungary. It's the time when Hungarians rose up against their Soviet occupation and fought for freedom in a revolution that was put down in large part because even though Hungarians, I think, believed that there was going to be help from abroad, no help came whatsoever. I think that sort of crystallized, or it should crystallize in every Hungarian's mind, that no matter what foreigners say about helping, when push comes to shove, they're not going to do anything, at least in the case of Hungary. And in fact, in 1956, it was the Suez crisis that took precedent instead of the October Revolution here. But anyway, back to Baka. So in October 1956, during the Hungarian Revolution, Captain János Korbei led troops that retook the Tatar police station held by revolutionaries. Now, he was later convicted in Hungarian courts, with the final Supreme Court ruling around 2001 to 2003. He was convicted of crimes against humanity for the intentional killing of revolutionaries, including a man called Tamás Kosás. He received a 5-year prison sentence, which was served partially until conditional release in 2005. Now, the conviction relied on classifying the acts under international law, Common Article 3 of the Geneva Convention, as non-expiring crimes against humanity. Now, Korbei, the man who was convicted, he applied to the European Court of Human Rights. And András Baka, today our president, he was then an ECHR judge. He sat on the Grand Chamber. And in its 19th of September 2008 judgment, the court found a violation of Article 7, which no punishment without law. It held that the domestic courts had not properly established that the killings formed part of a state policy of massive systematic attacks on civilians as required for crimes against humanity in 1956. Now, as any Hungarian will know, the state absolutely had a policy of just massive and systematic killings against revolutionaries. But anyway, so therefore Kosás was not a protected non-combatant under the Geneva Convention, and he was an armed insurgent leader who drew a weapon with intent rather than clearly surrendering. Now, Baka supported the majority decision, later confirming in interviews that it complied with international law. Now, the ruling did not acquit on the facts of the shooting, but invalidated the legal basis of the conviction under the convention. And now Hungarian courts later reopened the case and happily, thankfully, upheld responsibility on other grounds. So that was ruling one, effectively saying that, oh, you're a revolutionary killed by a policeman. No, the policeman absolutely wasn't doing it deliberately. No. So that was bollocks. So this is one point against Baka. That's a big point. The second one is to do with events that took place in 2006. Now, in 2006, you should know, in the autumn of 2006, there were very large anti-government protests. This was against the government led by Ferenc Gyurcsány, who was then the head of the Socialists. And this was after a speech leaked from a town called Őrszöd. And this was a speech in which he said that we lied morning, day and night, and we achieved nothing. And he was effectively bitching out his entire party for doing nothing. And later, of course, all the fans of Gyurcsány said that no, he wasn't talking about his own party and about his own conduct. He was talking about all politicians. No, he wasn't. He was just talking about his own party. So because of this speech, there were anti-government protests. They protested outside Hungarian national television, which was then at Szabadság tér, just behind the parliament. And eventually these protests were put down with using rubber bullets, using mounted police, using extreme violence by policemen against the Hungarian protesters. Police used force that critics described as excessive or brutal, because it was, and it resulted in hundreds of injuries. Now, few officers faced successful prosecution. Many protesters were convicted of offences, often based solely on police reports or testimony. So the police got off for being brutal, and the protesters didn't get off because they complained. And here, as Supreme Court President, Baka András, the man who is our president, publicly criticized the 2011 nullification law. This legislation retroactively annulled certain final convictions from the 2006 dispersals, where the only evidence were police reports and testimony, aiming to rehabilitate those seen as wrongly convicted. Baka argued that it violated judicial independence and the free assessment of evidence by judges, amounting to legislative interference in final judgments, and he also criticized later judicial reforms. And then later, as a Supreme Court judge here in Hungary, a panel led by Baka rejected compensation claims by at least one victim of the 2006 events, for example, Daniel Ducan, whose conviction had been nullified, and framed this as denying redress to police brutality victims and protecting the prior system's actions. Supporters, meanwhile, framed it as upholding rule of law principles against political nullification of court decisions. These were the decisions which, unfortunately, these leave a black mark by András Baka's name, because these go against things that a normal Hungarian will say were not cool. So a normal Hungarian is going to say, yes, the revolutionaries in 1956, were they attacked deliberately by the police and wiped out and killed deliberately? Yeah, of course they were. A normal Hungarian is going to say, even if you're a supporter of Gyurcsány, you're going to say, was there violent police brutality? Absolutely there was. Is it unfair? Is it not right that the protesters who complained, they were the ones who were punished while the police got off? Is it right that the police managed to get convictions based only on police testimony? No, of course it's not right. So these are the issues that many people in the opposition have against the election and the nomination of this man, András Baka. At the end of the day, though, does it mean anything? No, he's just an old man with a rubber stamp. He's not an important person at all, but he's not all sweetness and light, as perhaps the government wants us to think. He's not a wonderful person whose decisions we think about and go, you know what, I'm going to tell my kids about what a wonderful person this András Baka is because of the way he acted as a judge. That's just never going to happen. The only people it does happen are people who just, they took the red pill, or is it the blue pill? Who knows? And that's all that they're on. So those are the issues that have happened today. Otherwise, energy-wise, which is still an issue, of course, the Danube still continues to rise a little bit. Down in Paks, where we have our nuclear power station, now we already have 2 turbines running, so we're up to about 25% capacity of electricity being produced. This is a good sign. Unfortunately, there is no rain forecast in the near future. We are suffering effectively a drought. That is in no way good. And unfortunately, because there are no rains forecast, we can probably expect the levels of the Danube to fall a little bit again. But still, it's a very good sign that yesterday, the day before yesterday, the second turbine was turned on. We're at 25% production capacity. That's definitely a good sign. That's all for now. If you like my stuff, give me a like, give me a share. Thanks.